Let's focus more locally now. Long Island now in phase one of reopening. It started yesterday with curbside pickup, construction, manufacturing, farming and fishing industries back up and running. So joining us now with a look at how things are going, Suffolk County Executive Steve Bellone. So good morning to you, Mr. Bellone. Thank you for making the time for us this morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
So now that the county has reopened phase one after being on lockdown for 2 months, how did it actually go on day one? How's it looking?
Well, it went very well. I mean, people were ready for this. We've been through an incredibly trying experience here over the last couple of months as a nation. We know we reached a grim milestone of 100,000 deaths in Long Island. We've had nearly 4,000 people who have died from COVID-19. That is a staggering and painful number. But we've been on the downside for a number of weeks, and this was a big milestone for us to reopen and to get that economic activity going again.
Yep.
Was critical because the devastation has been real, and it went well, and I think people are responding well. They did a great job flattening the curve, and now I believe they're ready to keep that curve flattened and get our economy moving again.
So how do you plan on enforcing businesses to stay in compliance with the rules of what's in place for phase one?
Well, the things that are necessary to do this safely, to reopen safely, you need the public to continue to follow the guidance. You need the government to have the testing and the contact tracing in place. And I think in New York, Governor Cuomo has done an incredible job getting the testing up and running, working with the Johns Hopkins University and the Bloomberg team on contact tracing. We have that in place. But the final piece is the business community operating in a safe manner. And that's been the least of my concern, honestly, because this is what entrepreneurs do. They adapt, they adjust,
Yep.
and it really is a business imperative. They know they need to protect customers and employees to make them feel safe, and they also know that they cannot afford to go back into a restrictive environment if we see cases spike. So businesses are going to do this. I feel very confident in that.
So there's some people who say that reopening too soon could obviously cause problems and it can cause the numbers to go up, right? So you're closely monitoring the numbers very carefully. But if everything stays status quo, the numbers stay where they are, how quickly could you see moving into phase two?
Well, what has been discussed has been a 2-week time period. Epidemiologists talk about 2 weeks. But the fact that we've been hardest hit really in the country in New York in some ways now gives us an advantage because we get to see the experiences of other communities, and for us on Long Island to see what's happened in other counties upstate in New York on how they've reopened. And where we see certain activities where there has not been an impact, I think there's an opportunity there to say we can accelerate then our opening. And the governor opened the door for that when he talked about the potential for shortening those 2 weeks. And I think looking at the experience of other places similarly situated to us is a way to do that.
And if you don't like how the numbers are looking, you could easily roll things back?
Well, that's exactly right. We have a control room set up here for the Long Island region where we are communicating on a daily basis. We're looking at those numbers. But again, I feel confident that the public is going to continue to use common sense and do the right thing. We have in place what we need to do the testing and contact tracing. And I think the business community will as well. And the activities in phase one, in my view, fairly low risk economic activities. And I think we're going to be poised to move into phase two, hopefully even earlier than those 2 weeks.
How much communication happens with Nassau County and more importantly, New York City? Because a lot of residents hop on the LIRR, right? And then they get into New York City and then they come back into your communities. So how good is that communication with the mayor of New York City, Nassau County Executive Laura Kern, to make sure that this is an approach that all of you are uniform on? Because we saw what happened with the beaches, right? So I'm looking for a uniformity here from all three of you.
Yeah, to the extent possible, we always try to have a regional approach. Sometimes that's not possible. We are one region, but clearly there are differences between New York City and the suburbs. So where we can, we definitely try to have a regional approach. We do have good communications. I've spoken to the mayor, I speak to the Nassau County executive on a regular basis, on almost a daily basis, because we are one region here, and that is what our reopening metrics are based on. So the communication is good. It is not always easy to have a completely regional approach, and municipalities, to a certain extent, which we saw with the beaches, are going to make their own determination on how to move forward and what's best for their communities.
Understood. County Executive Steve Bellone, thank you for making the time with us. And as we continue this, you're welcome back anytime to keep us informed on what's going on there.
Thanks very much, Sam. Good to be with you.
All right, take care.